Good morning, everybody. I hope you're doing okay. I hope that you guys had an awesome long weekend. Long weekend for students, not as long for the teachers, but that's okay. I've been enjoying seeing your notes coming in. You guys are doing a good job paying attention to head proportion and how big or how small things should be. You're doing a phenomenal job. This week we're going to keep it relatively light and easy, not a giant amount of tasks, only because it's a 4-day week. It's right before spring break. I know how you feel, so let's not get overwhelmed. Let's just do some, good learning, so when we get back from spring break, we can implement all of our learning into more of a finished product, okay? So last week we talked about head proportion. We talked about how big or how small the features on your face should be in relationship to each other. So we talked about the width of the head, which should be about 5 eyes wide. We talked about how wide the nose should be, which is in line with the inside corners of your eyes. The corners of your mouth should be lined up with the centers of your pupils. Your hairline is halfway between your eye line and the crown of your head. So there's so many proportions that you need to pay attention to. Your ears are in line with your nose and your eyes. The width of your neck has to do where the ears are, so we don't look like lollipops. There's a plethora of things that we could talk about and have talked about already. So we talked about kind of a basic head structure. Let me turn this around for you. We talked about a basic head structure, and I'm sorry for the weird light on this. Hold on, let me see if I can turn it. That's better. Okay, so we talked about the basic head structure and how tall the head should be. Now remember, when you're doing a drawing, any sort of realistic drawing, I've always said you date the lines, you don't marry them right away, which means if you don't like a line, you can break up with it. You can erase it, you can get rid of it, you can try out a new line, date a new line. If you like that line, keep it. If you don't like that line, break up with that one. And if once you got it really right, then you make it permanent. You can make it darker and things like that. So you draw light until it's right. And so you just keep on moving that pencil, figuring out where objects should be. So what we're going to be focusing on today are the eyes. The eyes are so important. If the eyes aren't right, you can look like a cartoon. You could look like you have crazy eyes. We want to avoid all of that. So we're going to make sure that we get really pretty looking eyes. Obviously, for this overall project that we're going to end up doing after spring break, you'll be needing a mirror. You can always take a picture with your phone if you want to look at that. Sometimes mirrors are helpful because you can see details a whole lot easier than you can see in a photograph. But that's that. So what I want to talk to you today about is drawing the eyes. So I'm going to move to a fresh page. There's my 3-year-old's little drawing. Okay, I'm going to move to a fresh page, and we're going to talk about eye proportion. So when we talk about eye proportion, we're going to start out with kind of a basic drawing and then go on top of it with some more realistic marks. So to start out, we're going to draw bigger than normal, and we're just going to draw one eye, okay? So y'all can see, I don't know where that handwriting came from, so y'all can see sort of details and things like that. So first thing we're going to talk about is the proportion of an eye. So I want you to start out by just drawing kind of a general almond shape, and I want you to draw it relatively lightly, a general almond shape, okay? This is not anybody's eye in particular. This is just the idea of an eye. Then what we're going to do is kind of put some brackets on it, because we're going to be talking about proportion, okay? Size relationships. Size relationships, okay? You got to talk about size relationships so things look accurate, so you don't have a funky looking eyeball going on. Okay, so the first size relationship you need to understand is the relationship between the iris. Wait, let's have an anatomy lesson at first. Hold on. Before we start talking about all these things. All right, there's my eye. You see this eye right here? Okay, so we're talking about between this corner in this corner, okay? That is the general length of the eye. And then the brown part of my eye, keep on looking at the computer. The brown part of my eye is the iris. Okay, the iris is a muscle, and that muscle opens and closes depending on how much light your brain is asking for, so we can see images. The black part in the center, I hope you can see it. The black part in the center is called the pupil. Okay, so think about it this way. The iris, which is your colored part of your eye, the iris will open and it will close based on how much light your brain is asking for. Okay, so your eyeball is just almost like a big old camera. The pupil is a hole. That black part, the center part of your eye, is a hole which allows more light in, or it gets smaller based on the iris, or it gets smaller based on how little light you need. So when we are in normal indoor light, we have a certain proportion for our pupil. When we are outside, especially on a day like today, there's so much light outside and your brain is going, ooh, whoa, too much information, too much. And so your iris goes, okay, cool. And it closes down, and which means that your pupil is much smaller when you're in super bright light, because it's only letting in the amount of light or information that the brain needs. On the flip side of that, when you are in a dark room, your brain is saying, whoa, I need more, I can't see, I need more information. Information in this case is light. So I need more information, give me more information. So your iris and your pupil work together. Your iris says, okay, let's let in more information or light, so that your iris opens up, which means your pupil has more room to absorb light or that information. So when we're in a really dark place, your pupils look huge, okay? And those are holes basically into your retinas and all that stuff, and which connects to your optic nerve, which is the wiring that goes up to your brain, which allows that information to pass back and forth with your eye and information center up here. Okay, so there's a lot of things that you need to understand when it comes to size relationships as it happens with your eye. So when we talk about iris and pupil, I wanted you to understand what an iris did, what a pupil did. Okay, so first one, and we're going to say normal indoor light. These are the things you need to understand. The iris is 1/3 the size of your eye length. That's the first thing you need to understand. The iris is 1/3 the size of your eye length. So we'll draw that out in a second. All right, and then the second thing you need to know, in normal indoor light, the pupil is 1/3 the size of your iris. So that's easy to understand, and we're going to split these things up so it makes sense. So if we were to split this into one, no, that's too wide. Okay, one, that's about equal. We'll go a little bit wider. Okay, so you see how I dated the lines? I didn't marry them right away. I was just trying to get a nice light bracket so I can understand how big my iris should be. So your iris, which is the colored part, that big circle, is 1/3 the size of the length of the eye. So if we were to split that eye into 3 equal parts, the colored part in the center takes up 1/3. So sometimes people draw really, really big, and that looks really cartoony. And if you have something that's really, really small, that's also going to make you look not of this world. It wouldn't really make a whole lot of sense. In addition to that, when we are drawing an eye, especially like look at somebody in your house, look at your brother, your sister, your mom and dad, when they're looking at you normally, you're not going to see an entire circle. In fact, when we date the lines, we don't marry them right away, we're going to take away a lot of the top, because unless you have your eyes spread wide open like you're big and mad and stuff like that, you're not normally going to see a whole entire circle. You're going to see kind of a relaxed eye. Part of that circle is going to be chopped off. but you want to draw it as if it's an entire circle so it makes sense, okay? So the iris, the colored part, is 1/3 the size of your eye length, all right? Then when we're drawing the pupil, if we were to split that, again, in 3 equal parts, y'all see those 3 equal parts? 1, 2, 3. Those 3 equal parts. The pupil is right smack in the middle there, okay? Now the pupil is always going to be dark, 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 okay? It's a hole. So we can just fill that in nice and dark. Okay? All right, so then we have the iris itself. The iris is a muscle, and it has kind of these striations, these lines. Now we're going to get rid of kind of our brackets and like mathy stuff and art it up a little bit. So because the pupil is a muscle, we have to draw it such as that. So you should be making lines that, these striations that come out and move. I like to move my book around. It makes life a whole lot easier. You're just going to go in and out. Now, if you have brown eyes, make these lines a little heavier, a little darker. If you have blue eyes, make these lines a little bit lighter. So I want less contrast if I have brown eyes, and if I have blue eyes, I want more contrast, meaning I want to see that black circle a whole lot more if I have lighter eyes. Okay, so as I'm doing these striations, guys, I'm also paying attention to the outside edge of this iris. I want to kind of give it a little bit of a dark rim, because it's kind of like this ball thing, and as things recede away from you, you want it to look a little bit darker. So we're going to start there. We'll zhuzh it up in a minute. Okay, so there's that. Now, when you are doing the eye itself, we're just going to make kind of a general shape. We're looking at the tear duct on the inside right here. So tear duct kind of looks like, almost like a lemon kind of edge a little bit. Sometimes it's longer, sometimes it's shorter. So we're going to sort of mess with the edge there. We're going to make sure that there's some membrane, some tissue where that tear duct is. So I'm going to kind of make a parentheses. Okay. And make some value work here. Looking at that. Then we have kind of a ledge on the inside here where your eyelashes kind of grow from. So I want to make sure that I'm including that kind of information. An inside line, an outside line. I'm going to kind of make the idea of a small tear duct on the outside edge here. All right, so now as far as can you turn it on for her, please, right now? Thank you. All right, so as far as the top lid, you're going to be putting in some shadows because you have this eyelid that's covering up the whole white of your eye. All right, I'm going to mess with this a little bit. You can start working on an eye lid, and then you're going to end up doing some value work. So I'm going to be putting a little bit of darkness underneath. And then I made myself just a little twirl of paper as a blending stump. I just took a piece of sketchbook paper and I cut it into a triangle, and I'll show you guys that in a minute. Just so I can pull down some of that value, okay? And you can do the same thing here. Since it's kind of like a ball underneath, I'm going to put a little bit of material down. And I'm going to take that little blending stump, my little twirl of paper, get it kind of underneath. All right. I'm going to pull some of this shadow down because your lid is covering up some of your eye. You want to kind of get it shadowy on the other side there. I'm going to get rid of some value because what am I making? Some reflections. So I'm going to do a couple of just sort of irregular shapes. On part of the shape, I'm going to get some darkness going on. Okay, I'm going to get some darkness going on the outside of that shape right there. All right, I'm gonna maybe simmer them down a little bit so they're not so hard and intense. Okay, rub those out a little bit. All right, and then finally doing some lashes. Lashes are kind of like parentheses. When they're on the right side, they bend to the right. So up. So you need to look at yours. Like mine curl up. So I'm going to be making sure that mine are curly. Sometimes if you're straighter, you just kind of go out to the side a little bit. When I am right above my eye, I'm going to go straight, and when I'm working towards the left, I'm going to go to the left. But don't make them straight. If you make them super straight, they're going to be super duper kindergarten kind of sunshiny. And when you get into the inside corner, make them small and kind of sparse. Okay, so this is just a real super quick eye. But that's what I want you sort of starting to work on for your notes. Okay? All right. I hope you guys, I wish you luck with this. I'm going to be checking for these things on Wednesday, and then I'm going to be showing you some new stuff. And that won't be due until after spring break. Okay? So we're going to keep it light. We're going to keep it easy, but I wanted to see some good eyeball practice. All righty. Take care. You be good. Bye.